Hey everyone, Romeo here, a fellow Spanish language learner. In this video, I want to try to answer a serious question, which is, are YouTube polyglots even real? Why? Because recently someone asked me whether I plan to learn another language when I'm done learning Spanish. And my answer was simple, no, at least not anytime soon. Now, that answer surprises some people because language learning on YouTube often celebrates people who speak 5, 10, or even 20 languages. But the deeper I go into Spanish, the more I've started asking a different question. What does it actually mean to speak a language? Because I don't think we all mean the same thing when we use that phrase. A few years ago, if I saw someone speaking 10 languages, I would have been blown away. Today, after spending years studying Spanish, I find myself wondering something else. For anyone who says they are polyglot, how deep can they actually go in those languages? It's a genuine question because Spanish alone has convinced me that a language is much bigger than most people think. When I first started learning Spanish, I thought being able to order food, ask for directions, or check into a hotel and make small talk sounded pretty impressive. Now, I realize that's barely scratching the surface. Those are useful skills, but they're also some of the easiest situations to prepare for. Restaurants have predictable vocabulary, hotels have predictable vocabulary, and even travel conversations tend to be predictable. So if you constrain your studies to just those settings and the most common small talk within those settings, anyone could become functional in those situations relatively quickly. But doing that only requires you to survive in the language in those carefully curated situations. The problem with this is that surviving in a language and being deeply competent in a language are not the same thing. If all I wanted from Spanish was to order coffee, ask where the bathroom is, and navigate a vacation, I could have stopped studying a long time ago. But that's not what I'm trying to build. I want Spanish that works in real life. I want to understand native speakers when they're talking naturally. I want to discuss ideas, follow conversations that move quickly, and I want to understand people who don't slow down for me. But even after years of study, I still have work to do in all of those areas. There are still domains where my vocabulary isn't strong. There are still speakers who are difficult for me to understand. And there are still situations where I know exactly what I want to say, but can't say it as efficiently as I can in English. So when I look at Spanish by itself, it's enormous. And that's what makes me wonder about polyglots. Because for me, the word polyglot doesn't actually tell me very much. So why do I care? What's the big deal, right? Well, I remember disagreeing with their Polyglots video once, and someone replied to me with something along the lines of, "This person speaks 20 languages. Why would you think you're right over him?" And that's exactly the issue. The purported ability of speaking 20 languages shouldn't automatically settle any argument because that number itself doesn't tell us how deeply those languages are understood, nor does it automatically make someone correct about language learning. Those are separate claims. Let's say someone says that they can speak 10 languages. Okay, at what level? That's the question. Can they just order food, introduce themselves, and have basic conversations? Or can they discuss complex topics, follow fast native conversation between multiple speakers, and work professionally in that language? Those are very different levels of ability. Yet, all of them often get compressed into the same phrase. I speak the language. And I think that's where we need to be careful because it's easy to see someone speaking 10 languages and assume they possess deep mastery in all 10. Maybe they do, but maybe they don't. The title polyglot itself doesn't answer that question. One thing Spanish has taught me is that speaking and understanding are not the same skill. And in fact, speaking is much easier for me than understanding. Why? Because when I'm speaking, I control the conversation. I choose the vocabulary, the grammar, the speed, and the topics. And it's easy to simply stay inside the boundaries of what I already know. But when someone else starts speaking, I lose all of that control. They choose the vocabulary, the speed, the accent, and the slang, and they choose the direction of the conversation. And suddenly, the language becomes much harder. That's why it's possible for me to say things in Spanish that I would still struggle to understand if someone said those exact same things back to me quickly, naturally, and in the middle of a real conversation. Speaking and understanding are related skills, but they are not identical skills. And I think that's the reason why language demonstrations can be difficult to evaluate. If someone speaks to a waiter for 2 minutes in another language, I can see what they actually say. What I can't easily see is what they can understand. I don't know how they perform when the other person starts speaking quickly, how they perform when the conversation goes off script, or how well they perform when unfamiliar vocabulary appears. In other words, I don't know how they perform when they're listening instead of talking. What I've come to realize as a self taught language learner in just one language is that language has multiple dimensions: speaking, reading, listening, and writing. And within those, there's vocabulary depth, a range of topics, and a speed of processing. A short conversation clip may show some of those, but it rarely, if ever, shows all of them. So, again, the deeper I get into Spanish, the more skeptical I become of surface level demonstrations, which is exactly why I don't make a bunch of Spanish speaking YouTube videos. Not because they're worthless, but because they're incomplete. And at the end of the day, it doesn't prove much at all. If your goal is to become a polyglot by learning enough language to travel, survive, and have basic conversations, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a legitimate goal. But if your goal is to achieve a deep, functional, and highly usable ability, then that's a much bigger project than you may realize. For me, Spanish has become proof of that. So when someone claims to speak 10 or 20 languages, I'm not impressed by what they can show in an edited video that proves how many languages that they can speak. I'm impressed when I can see in real time what they can actually do with all of those languages that they say that they can speak, because those are two different performances. And language learning gets a lot cleaner when we stop counting languages and start defining ability. So here's my question for you. When someone says they speak multiple languages, what standard do you use? Basic conversation, travel survival, deep functional ability, or something else? Let me know in the comments. And if this video helped you think more clearly about what it actually means to speak a language, go ahead and give this video a like. And until the next video, good luck on your journey to building more functional, usable Spanish. Peace.